Welcome guys. In this tutorial we're going to be talking about loop. So what is a loop? Loop is a mechanism that enables you to execute a statement or block of statements actually repeatedly until a particular condition is met. So a loop, we use loop to iterate over. In Java we have three basic types of loops. So we have the for loop, while loop, and then the do while loop. So in this tutorial we're going to be talking about them: the for loop, while loop, and then the do while loop. But we also have the enhanced for loop, but we're not going to be talking about that, not in this section of this tutorial. So first let's look at the for loop. So this is the syntax of for loop. We use the for keyword to define a for loop. Then inside the parentheses, the first part we have here is the initialization part. The initialization part is where you can define a variable, or you can initialize a variable. What we mean initialize a variable is to give a variable value. That is what is called initialization. We initialize a variable, we give it a value. So that is what is called initialization. And then in the second part, this is where you put your condition. So as long as your condition is true, what you wrote inside your block will be executed repeatedly. And then here in the iteration, this is where you can actually use increment or decrement. There are other things you can do, yeah, but mostly we use increment or decrement in the last argument. So let's see an example of using the for loop. So in this example we're going to print out numbers from 0 to 10. So as I've mentioned, we use the for loop. Then here, open curly bracket, then I'm going to define a variable I and then initialize it with value 0. This is our initialization part. And then our condition, as I've mentioned, how many times do we want to how many numbers do we want to print on the screen? As I've said, we're going to print out from 0 to 10. So I'll say our condition will be I is less than or equals 10. Then we increase the value of I by 1. So now what I'm going to do is just to print out this I on the screen. So let's run this. And you see here we have 0, 1, 2 all the way to 10. So let's explain this. This is our initialization part. We declared a variable I and then initialize it with 0. This is our condition, I is less than or equals 10. Then we increment I by 1. So each step, when it comes here, the first time it's look at this initialization part. So after it initializes I, then it checks the condition. So I is less than or equals 10. It's true, right? Because I is 0, 0 is less than or equals 10, so that's true. So it comes here and then print out the value of I, then goes back here and then to increment the value of I by 1. So after it increments it by 1, then it comes back here to the condition. It is not going to be initializing again because the initialization is done only once. So since this is only the initialization part, we can actually take this out. We can initialize our variable from outside this scope. So I can initialize it I. So all I have to do here, I can define it here. So here is definition. We are declaring the variable, not initializing it. So I can take this out, and here if I run this, we should have the same output. And here you see we have the same output. You can actually also initialize your variable from outside. So now I can initialize it I equals 0. So if I come here, I can actually remove all this one, and then but notice I still leave my semicolon here. If you did the initialization outside, always put the semicolon then followed by the condition. And let me run this again. So here you see we have it. So you can actually also take all these ones out. You can take this one out. So this is actually an infinite loop. Why is it an infinite? Because here we're not specifying any condition, so the loop has no condition. It will always evaluate to true, so this will actually run forever. If I try to run this, it will be increasing the value of I by 1 each time, so it will keep repeating forever. So let me run this, and here you see, boom, we're just getting numbers. It is not stopping, so let's force the stop it. Let's stop it here, and here you see process finish with an exit code 143. That's because it is interrupted by signal 15, which is 6 string, because we interrupt it, otherwise it will keep running forever. We can also take this one out actually, so let's write something here. Let's write infinite, how is it, infinite for loop. So let me run this, and boom, we have our infinite for loop. Let's also stop it. So now let's look at the break and continue keyword. So let me bring everything back. So what is the break keyword? The break keyword, we use the break keyword to break out of a loop, and then the continue keyword, we use it to skip a count or to skip an iteration. So let's take, for instance, we wanted, our condition says that we want to print from 0 to 10. So let's assume here we want to end at 5. So when I reaches 5, just break out of this loop. So we can easily do that by checking the value of I. So we use the if statement. So if I equals 5, then we can come here and then break. So here I've actually not discussed about it, but your if statement can actually, you can use it without this curly bracket as long as you have a single statement over here. But most of the times it is recommended to use this one because it is more readable, like this. So let's run this. We should see our loop should end at 4, and here you see we got 0 all the way to 4, but we're at rest. That's because we use the break keyword. As I've mentioned, we use the break keyword to jump out of a loop. Then we also use the continue keyword. Is also one of the most used keyword when you're working with loops. So the continue keyword, it actually skips a loop. It skips an iteration or count. So if I run this, what we're doing here, if I equals 5, so when I reaches 5, it will skip the iteration of this 5 and then goes back and continue. So let me run this and see. We should see that 5 will be skipped. And here you see we got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There is no 5 here. Then we got 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Let's also talk about nested loops. So what are nested loop? It's just like loop within loop. Yeah, you heard me right. Loop within another loop. So inside this loop here, I can actually create another loop here. That is what is called a nested loop. So you can have as many nested loops as you want, but this usually depends on your condition, on your use case. So I'm going to define another loop here. I'm going to name this variable j. So j is less than or equals, let's say we want to do this 5 times and then increase the value of j by 1. So I'm going to, so here I'll just print out these values. So the value of I, and then print it, then the value of j, then print it. So let's run this. And what do we have here? See, we get many numbers. So let me explain how this behavior works. So when I is 0, so technically the inner loop is executed fully while the outer loop is executed only once. So the inner loop is executed fully while the outer loop is executed only once. So when I is 0, j will be executed fully, because here you can see when I is 0, j becomes 0 in the first iteration, then in the second it becomes 1, in the third 2, 4, 5, all to up to 5. You can see here. So this is actually the inner one, is this one. This is the inner loop, and then this is the outer. So the inner is executed only once, while the outer and the inner is executed fully while the outer is executed only once. So now let's do something cool. So now let's try to write a program to print. But before we do that, what I want to say is, let's write a program to print the first 20 even numbers. But before we do that, let's talk about the other types of loops we have. So I'm just going to comment this one over here and then talk about the while loop. So the while loop continues executing as long as a specific condition is true. And here you can see this is the syntax of the while loop. So inside this parenthesis, we just give it a condition. That's it. It doesn't need any increment or initialization. It doesn't need it. But sometimes when you're using some things like you want to increase the values, sometimes it's recommended to use the for loop. But what I want to say is, you can actually replace for loop with while loop. So let's try to do just that. So I'm going to, but to do that, I'm going to define a variable here outside. I'm going to name this count and then initialize it with 0. So I'm just going to give it a condition that says count is less than or equals 10. So we want to print out those values from 0 up the way up to 10. So let's just do that. System.out.println count. But don't forget, here we actually have to increment the value of this count by 1, otherwise this loop will run forever. Yeah, because our condition will always be true if we try to take this out. So let me just show you. So let's run this, and here you see we got 0 all the way to 10. So let me show you what I mean. So let me just comment this out. So this our for loop will run forever, and it will just keep outputting 0 0 0, because we are not increasing the value of 0 by anything. So let's run this, and you see it is not stopping. So let's force it. see we're not increasing the value of 0 by anything, and our condition says count is less than or equals 10, and 0 is always less than 10. So that's why our loop is going to keep repeating itself forever. Let me comment this ones out as well. So let's see do while loop. So the do while loop, you can see here's the syntax. We use the do keyword, then inside this do block we write in the block of our code what we want to be executed as long as our condition is true, and then in the while parameter we specify our condition. So the do while loop is actually different from the while loop. The do while loop is executed at least once. So even if your condition is false, because the condition is checked at the end of an iteration, so the do while loop is always executed at least once. So let me show what I mean. So we use the do keyword. So I'm just going to copy this one here, then paste it over here. Then here I'm going to define the count here, set it to 0, then I'll put in my condition here. So I'll say count is less than or equals 10, then my semicolon over here. So and here you see we have 0 printed all the way to 10. So let me show you what I mean. Assuming here this is not 0, so let's assume this is 20. We know that our condition is true because 20 is greater than 10. So see what happens. This block will be executed only once and then it ends. And you see we got 20 printed out, and then boom, it finished executing. So this is what I mean by do while loop is executed at least once. So let's try to do something here. So let's print out the first 20 even numbers. So our condition is going to be less than or equals 20. So let's check if I modulo 2 remains 0. So if I is divisible by 2 means that it is an even number. So let's print that out. Dot print line I. We're just going to print I. So let's run this, and you see we got 0 all the way to 20. Notice we have 220 here. This 20 is for the last one over here. So we got 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. Those are the even numbers we have in the range of 0 and 20. So this is the end of this tutorial. So please appreciate my hard work by liking and subscribing to my YouTube channel. It really helps me grow. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye. So in order to solve this exercise, we have to know how the Fibonacci series works. So this is how it works. It starts with two numbers. The first one is going to be 0, and then the second one is going to be 1. So in order to get the next number, we just have to add 0 plus 1, then we get 1. In order to get the next number after that, we just have to again add 1 plus 1 to get 2, 1 plus 2 to get 3, and so forth. So let's see how we can implement this in our program. So let's first start up by int. So I'm just going to name this last number. So let me use it last num, and then it's going to be 1. The last number is supposed to be 1. Then int, and then we will have first number. First number is going to be 0 here. Then now, how many times do we want this? So we want to print the 21st Fibonacci series. So let's use for I equals 0, then I is less than 20, then I increments. So now we need to calculate this Fibonacci number here, but before we do that, we actually have to print out this first. So we first have to print out those two values on the console before we continue. So let's do that. Put print line, then we have our first number. Oops, what am I doing? First number, then we have our last number over here. Then inside here we need to calculate the next number we are going to have. So we're going to name this FIB, and then it's going to be the first number here plus the last number. Then now we need to do something to swap those values, but before we do that, let's print out this FBI value. So FBI. So then here we need to swap those values. The last number is going to become FIB, and FIB is going to become the last number. So last number is going to become FIB here, and then first number is going to become this the last number actually. So first number is going to become last number. So notice this is supposed to be at the top here. So the first number, so let me explain this, but before that let me run this and see what we have, then I'll explain more. So here we have it. You see, I think that's correct. Well, it is. So let me explain this. So first we define our first two numbers. So we have the first number as 0, then the second number as 0. So we knew that in order to get the next number, we have to add our first number and then the second number, then we will obtain our next number. So now we print out those first two values here. Then this is our condition, which is going to iterate 20 times here. Then here we define another variable. We name this FIB, which is going to be the next number in the series. So we add first number plus the second number. So when this is 0, let me use this and explain. So we knew that first number is 0 and plus last number is 1. So we will have 1 stored in FIB. So the first time, that's the first time of course. So then we will have 1 printed here. Then we need to swap those values, the first number to become the last number. So now first number will change. So here first number here will change to the last number, which is 1. And then here last number here will change to the value we have here, which is 0 plus 1, so it becomes 1. So that's how this works. So this is the end of loops tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all this good stuff to my YouTube channel. It really helps me grow, and I will even create more content for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Stick around and I will see you in the next. Bye.